of surveillance, of censorship. You listen to President Harris boast about the people who are supporting her, who have flocked out of the Democratic Party, people like John Kelly, people like Dick Cheney. Do you want Dick Cheney back in the White House? And people like John Bolton. These are the people who wrote the Patriot Act. The act that launched the surveillance state, that launched the national security state, that introduced torture and introduced surveillance and allowed the CIA to spy on the American public for the first time in our history. They're the people who gave us the Iraq War, who lied to us in order to get us into the Iraq War. That war was the worst foreign policy blunder in American history. That war cost $4.3 trillion. And we killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein. We created ISIS. We drove 4 million refugees into Europe and destabilized every democracy in Europe for generations. Brexit is a direct result of that war. All the riots we're seeing now in European cities are a result of that war. The rise of totalitarianism across Europe, the end of free speech across Europe is a result of that war. And don't you think we should have learned a lesson from that war? You think the Democratic Party learned that lesson? You think Dick Cheney has changed his opinion about the Patriot Act? No, he's changed parties because he thinks the Democratic Party is now the party of the neocons. It's the party of surveillance, of censorship, of war. And it's the party that is a cheerleader for big ag, or big pharma, or the people who are poisoning our children. The most existential threat that our country faces today is this chronic disease epidemic. When my uncle was president, I was a 10-year-old boy. 6% of Americans had chronic disease. 3% were obese. We spend $0 every year treating chronic disease. Zero. Today, 60% of Americans have chronic disease. About 70% are obese or overweight. You know how many people are obese and overweight in Japan? 3%. Same as here in 1963. We have 70%. 77% of American kids cannot qualify for military service. The diabetes rates in our country have gone from virtually zero. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician saw one case of diabetes in his entire 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 children who walk through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. When I was a kid, and today, in the 70-year-old men, 1 in 10,000 people had autism. Today, 1 in every 34 of our children have autism. 1 in every 22 boys. This is existential for our country. We're spending $4.3 trillion on chronic disease. That's 5 times our military budget. This is going to destroy our country unless we have a president who's going to end it forever. Wealth in our country was owned by Republicans, about 30% by Democrats. Today, 70% of the wealth is owned by Democrats and 30% by Republicans. There's been a total inversion of policy and of the constituencies of both these parties. The Republican Party has been become the party of working people in this country. About a month ago, I was with Charlie Kirk. Let's give a big hand for Charlie Kirk. Hey, he said Donald Trump ran all the billionaires out of the Republican Party, like Bill Gates. And yesterday, it was announced that Kamala Harris has raised $2 for every $1 that has been raised by Donald Trump. That's because it's all coming from people like Bill Gates. And they have all the money now. But we have all the people. Defend our Constitution. I would say one other thing. President Harris said today in her post, in her speech, he said that President Trump was going to turn the U.S. military against the American public and use the public to promote his agenda. How many of you think that is true? Never been done in American history, which is to send exactly legal force, to send a directive to the Pentagon, changing the law to make it legal for the U.S. military to use lethal force against American citizens on American soil. Technically now it's legal for the U.S. military, under this directive, it will become legal for the U.S. military to shoot and kill Americans who engage in political protest because they disagree with policies in the White House.